For a long time, Vietnam's ClimateTech sector was a bit of a blind spot for many in the industry. But that's changing, and changing fast. What was once an overlooked frontier is now becoming a major player in the global green transition, and we're about to show you why.
So let's just start with one single powerful number, 19 gigawatts. That is the amount of utility-scale solar and wind capacity Vietnam has already installed. Now, to put that into perspective, that's more than double the rest of the ASEAN nations combined. This isn't just impressive growth, this is a clear statement of leadership.
In this briefing, we're going to cover how Vietnam became this new energy leader. We'll break down the two key pillars here, Cleantech and Ecotech. Then, we'll follow the money and look at the funding trends. And finally, we'll talk about what's next for Vietnam's green future.
So how did Vietnam pull this off? How did it establish such a dominant position in the region? Well, it certainly didn't happen by accident. It's really this powerful mix of a deliberate, top-down strategy and some incredible natural advantages.
Okay, two key things are driving this. First, you have an unwavering commitment from the government. They've set these really ambitious goals, like hitting net zero by 2050, and they're backing it up with actual policy. That gives investors the stability and roadmap they need. And second, the country is just blessed with amazing natural resources, a long coastline that's perfect for wind, and a tropical climate made for solar. It's that synergy, that combo of policy and geography that creates such fertile ground for growth.
Now, before we dive deeper, let's quickly define the two main areas driving this whole transformation. On one side, you have clean tech. Think of this as everything related to decarbonizing energy. On the other side, you have ecotech, which takes a broader view. It's all about the circular economy, reducing waste and making the most of our resources.
All right, let's start with Cleantech. And this isn't just about sticking a solar panel on a roof. We're talking about innovation across the entire energy journey, from the moment it's created to the moment it's used.
You can really break this down into four key stages. First up is generation. Think solar and biogas. Then you have storage, which is absolutely critical to make renewables reliable 24/7. After that comes distribution, which is all about getting that power to people, often using new financial tools. And finally, there's management, using tech like AI and IoT to help us use that energy smarter.
And you can see local innovators are already stepping up at every single stage. You've got companies like CME and Generation focusing on solar for businesses. For storage, Alterno is doing some really cool, groundbreaking work with sand batteries for farming. And in distribution, a company like Stride is making solar more affordable for everyone. It just shows you how deep this ecosystem is getting.
So, here's the bottom line. Vietnam's clean tech scene is not a one-trick pony. It's a comprehensive, diversified ecosystem with startups tackling the entire energy lifecycle. And that's what makes the whole system so much more resilient and efficient.
Okay, so we've talked about energy. Now let's switch gears and talk about materials. This is the second pillar, Ecotech. And it's all about fundamentally redesigning our relationship with waste to build a true circular economy. You can think of the Ecotech value chain in 3 steps. It all starts with waste reduction, basically stopping waste before it even happens. The next step is resource circulation, which is recycling, but with a modern twist, using digital platforms to make it way more efficient. And the final step, which is really transformative, is upcycling, turning that waste into new products that are actually more valuable than the original.
And again, we're seeing real innovation here. For waste reduction, Refeed is using data to collect used cooking oil. In recycling, GRAC has built a digital marketplace to connect everyone in the waste chain. And then there's Eric's Carbon, which is doing something amazing, creating carbon-negative materials from one of Vietnam's most famous resources, coffee grounds.
So the big takeaway here is that ecotech in Vietnam is way beyond just basic waste management. These companies are building the actual infrastructure for a circular economy, turning what we used to call trash into a valuable resource.
So we've seen the tech and we've seen the business models. But what about the money to make it all happen? Let's take a look at the investment landscape because we're at a really interesting turning point right now.
If you look at the historical data, say from 2015 to 2023, you'll see that Ecotech and Cleantech got a pretty small slice of the overall funding pie. This was the old picture, a sector with massive potential, but one that was, until very recently, pretty underfunded.
But that picture is changing, and fast. The recent momentum is undeniable. Remember CME, the solar company? They just secured $20 million. Stride closed a $3.5 million Series A. Smart Solar raised nearly $2 million in a seed round. This isn't just a trickle, this is the start of a real, steady flow of capital.
So here's the crucial point. The smart money is starting to move in. This is a huge validation of the business models we've been talking about, and it signals a whole new phase of growth as investors finally see that alignment of policy, technology, and market demand.
So you've got strong policy, you've got emerging tech, and now you've got the investment flowing in. What does that mean for the future? Well, all signs are pointing to a really powerful, self-reinforcing cycle of growth.
We're really seeing a convergence of three key drivers. The government policy just keeps getting stronger, creating a stable environment. At the exact same time, demand for sustainable solutions is rising, from both big companies and everyday consumers. This market pull creates the perfect storm for these new clean tech and ecotech models to scale up, and scale up quickly.
And what this convergence means is that Vietnam is perfectly positioned for strong, sustained growth in climate tech. This isn't some short-term trend. This is the foundation for the country to become a true regional leader in the green economy. And that leaves us with one final, very important question to think about. As this once-overlooked frontier continues to rise, what role will Vietnam ultimately play in shaping the future of green technology, not just for itself, but for all of Southeast Asia? Everything we've covered here is a high-level summary from our latest report. For the full breakdown, including all the data, company profiles, and a much deeper market analysis, we invite you to access the complete report.